Welcome back to the Pre-Vetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, I'm joined by Jimi Gibson. He's VP of Brand Communications at Thrive Agency. He's a TEDx speaker and a longtime voice in modern marketing. Jimi has spent more than 25 years, helping brands cut through noise with clear messaging. And lately, he's been focused on what happens when buyers stop scrolling and start asking AI for the one answer. Jimi, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Federico. Looking forward to our conversation. It should be a fun one.
Yes, going to be a fun conversation. Thank you for being here today. So for people meeting you for the first time, how do you describe what do you do?
Well, that's changed a little bit over the last few years. I came to Thrive about 5.5 years ago to head up their strategy department. I'm a firm believer, and so is the agency. If you don't have a good strategy, you're going to end up somewhere pretty expensive and somewhere you probably don't want to be. So setting the strategy before we start doing any work, I think is the right way to do it. And then I moved into an executive position and was actually guiding the teams on all the work that we did. We have about 1,000 active clients, and we work with small business owners all the way up to enterprise, multi-location, franchise businesses. And so it's never a dull moment as far as that goes. And then I guess about 1.5 years ago, the owner came to me and realized that things were shifting with the way companies were discovered. And there was a lot of confusion out there about AI and is SEO dead? Or are we all going to have to pack our bags and listen to the robots? Or, what's going to happen? And so he actually wanted me to be the face of the company and to help educate business owners and founders and CEOs and folks within organizations about what they should really be focused on. And there's certain things that maybe you're a little bit behind the times on, and there's other things that you're just at the right moment that you need to take advantage of a few things. And, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And because we've been around for 20 years and we've seen just about every shift in the algorithms, he felt strongly that we had a voice that we needed to be able to help people through this transition. So that's what I've been doing for about the last 18 months is speaking at conferences, talking to interesting people like you and writing articles and just trying to make sure that everybody gets the right information at the right time.
Right. Very interesting. And what pulled you into marketing in the first place?
Well, that's an even more interesting story, Federico. I actually started out as a professional magician, not a musician, a magician, yes, floating people in the air and sawing them in half. And I actually got a magic kit when I was very young, and I was hooked. I didn't know why it was hooked. Maybe it was channeling my class clown behavior, or I knew something that somebody else didn't know, or there was this idea of things happening behind the scenes, and then you come out on stage and you perform this trick that defies physics. It was just fascinating. And so in high school, I met a gentleman who was an account manager for a Fortune 100 company. And they were looking for somebody to do promotional shows. And so I did that for another 16 years. And I got to hang out at the advertising agency and see all the cool campaigns they were working on. And I thought, you know what, if there's any career that's similar to being a magician, I would say it's a marketer. And so I still perform magic, but I did transition into working at agencies. I was a creative director at an agency. I ran an agency. Most of my career has been on the agency side of things, trying to solve problems for people who want to grow their business. And I guess there's a parallel between capturing attention, keeping that attention, and then moving them to some sort of conversion. And I guess it's the lens that I see marketing through. And I don't know, maybe we'll chat about that a little bit today, but it's been an interesting dual career from the performance side and then the marketing side for sure.
Right. I find that fascinating. I mean, I think that there is this, dynamic between you and the audience when you're on a stage, right? Similar to theater, right? Like
Sure.
you have this dynamic. And then when we get into marketing, we have additional layers of, if you have a camera, you don't see the audience directly. But I think that dynamic still exists. It's just, a little bit more complex. It takes a little more time to, receive the feedback from the audience.
Right.
But I think that there's a lot of parallels between your magic shows and, promoting a company, right?
There's certain steps that I think are important to understand about a communication, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's a leader trying to guide a team, whether it's a social media post. And, our brains are pretty much all the same. They all want the same sort of things to happen to make us feel comfortable, to elicit that curiosity, and then have the magic trick work and it be like this amazing wow, or for the business to succeed in helping a customer figure out that they're the right choice for that business. I think we've maybe sort of lost some of that wow and some of that theater that we should be including in our messaging, and would love to explain some of the brain chemistry that's related to a magic trick and then how we can use that in business. And I think people could apply that right after they finish listening to this episode if they'd like.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And the level of noise that has been on everything, right? We're overflown with so many messages and posts and notifications that our attention span has been greatly reduced, right? So punching through that noise has been more and more challenging, right?
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to how specific are you communicating, or how much are you relying on the easy button of ChatGPT to write all of that for you or communicate all of that for you? And so I would say we're overwhelmed with content that's pretty basic and vanilla and not very spicy. And, you can have good spice and bad spice, but I think there's going to be a sorting out period where the folks who are being authentic and they're telling real stories and they're including their scars and bruises and champagne toasts that have happened through the course of their business are going to win out over the people who were satisfied with generic content.
Right, right. Yes, I completely agree. So you've said that AI changed how marketing works today. What is the biggest change you've seen so far?
Yeah, I would say, and for those of you watching on video, I've been around a little while in the business, and I remember when desktop publishing first started and everybody was afraid that, my gosh, nobody's going to need somebody to do their layouts and all of that. I think AI has been more disruptive than that because it's hitting on everything. Do we need artists to draw pictures? Do we need photographers to take photos? Do we need writers to write us engaging copy? Now we're getting into the agentic era of having them do tasks. Do we need all of the people on our team that we thought we needed? And I think one of the things that we're seeing from, an agency perspective and working with a variety of clients is the human element still has to be there. AI is not to the point where it can replace all of that. And the way that these AI models find businesses is a little bit different than traditional SEO. And if you're not aware of how they work, it's probably good to study, do some research, ask whatever your favorite large language model, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, any of those, just ask it, how do you find a business? How do you work? That's the interesting thing about them. If you converse with them, they'll tell you. Now, sometimes it's not always true. We've heard about the hallucinations, but I guess the biggest difference from a visibility standpoint that we've seen is in traditional SEO, the person looking for a business would type something in more related to a keyword thinking, right? That was the way that we existed for many, many years. And then you would receive back a page on Google that had 10 blue links. And then it was up to you to decide, do I click the first link? Do I click the second link? Or wait a minute, there's an ad. I don't want to click on that ad, but I kind of recognize this name. And so it was really on the person who was doing the search to decide what that choice was. And companies optimize their website for that keyword structure, right? And so there were keywords on your website, there were backlinks to the website, which are still important. But the way these large language models look at a business has changed. It's not keyword based. Backlinks are still important, but the quality of those sites linking to you is much more important. One of these large language models is actually trying to do is they have a knowledge base, right? And so there's periods of time where they update their knowledge base. And then they layer that on if they can search the web with additional information that adds to that knowledge base. And they're looking for certain things. And if a business has not taken the time to pay attention to what these AI bots want to know or what it takes to get in the knowledge base, then they've become invisible. And we've seen some of our clients and some of the prospects coming to us, traffic to their website has dropped off 25, 50, 75%. And they're quite upset. And so I think the biggest shift that we've seen is the conversations are now happening in so many different places. Again, as I said in the beginning, there's a lot of confusion about what do I do? How do I do it? I don't want my traffic to disappear. How do I get visible on these various LLMs? All of these tools are upgrading at a very fast speed. And I would say there's a lot of confusion. And so I know that was a long answer to probably a short question, but I would say the biggest thing that we're seeing is confusion and people not being visible in the places that they used to be visible, and that's very disturbing to businesses.
Right, right. I mean, I remember Paul Graham saying to an executive of Google that their business model is dead, right? Because now ads, Google ads are dead basically. But I mean, and I was taking that with a grain of salt, right?
Sure,
Because
sure.
I don't think that a big company like that is going to be immediately dead. But there is definitely a revolution on how to promote companies, right? I think that's the takeaway I take from that comment. And the SEO was something that was working for many years. Before that, I don't know if you remember, the companies would have names like AAA, Acme Company, whatever name that is, right?
For the
Because
phone book.
that way
Yeah.
you would show up to the front of the book, right? Of the
Right, right.
white page, right? Or yellow page. So
Yeah.
then we
Those are
had
the days.
SEO that basically was a revolution on how we promote companies. And what you're describing is revolution, maybe a revolution, maybe an evolution, but a new way for companies that they should promote, because if they follow the traditional SEO route, they're not going to get the results that they were getting before, right?
Yeah. And I would say one thing, and I'll use an acronym that actually Google originated back in 2016, and then they updated it in early 2020s. It's EEAT, which is experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And so Google basically qualified content related to that acronym, and these large language models have picked up on that. And I would say, while you can be a little bit pessimistic and think, I'll never be able to catch up, you actually have an opportunity right now to stand head and shoulders above the people who are not hitting one or more of those letters in that acronym. And so what these large language models are doing is they want to know, can I trust this company to have them be in the consideration set of what I reply back when somebody asks a question to me? And they're looking for businesses that qualify, but more often than not, they're actually looking for people because it's hard for a business. So in the past, you could have backlinks to the website, you could optimize for keywords, and a website could rank with the owner or executive team or people within the organization basically being invisible or faceless. What AI loves to see is the people. And so if you have sort of hidden behind the scenes in the past, this is a great opportunity for you to step out, be visible, be in the conversation with a perspective so that the connection between the company and the people within the company now gives you a significant competitive advantage for those who want to stay invisible from a person perspective. And I would say you don't have to be a content creator. You don't have to produce content at the rate of what you might imagine. The bar is very low. Search Engine Journal actually released a research report in November of last year that said if an executive published 10 times a year on LinkedIn, now that's not a month, that's not a week, that's a year, 10 times, less than once a month, their referral rate would increase by 30% and their deal size would be larger. And so that should tell you that these models are hungry for experts because it follows the experience, expertise, authority. And then if you've never really put a lot of effort into reviews from clients, now's the time, because in that trustworthiness factor, what they're also looking for are brand mentions and the sentiment of the brand. Is the sentiment positive? Is the sentiment negative? And so they're looking in a variety of places for these customer reviews. And so those are just a couple of the clues that folks should be aware of. And I'm happy to give a couple of tips for, if somebody wants to, do their first tackle in the next 30 days, what should you do? But yeah, I would say that's the major difference is it's no longer okay to be invisible.
Right, right. And as you said, now we have a greenfield opportunities, right? Because the first one in the game are going to have much more impact, right, and authority, and that's going to stick for the long run, right? Even if the policy changes further down the road, that being the first is going to have a larger weight into it, right?
Yeah, because you want to be included when that knowledge base is updated. And,
right.
These AI platforms love it when people are consistent in what they talk about. And so they're looking for consistency. They're looking for recency of information. And if you start getting recommended, it's going to go back and go, oh, has Federico got anything new to say about this? And so the sooner you get started, the better off you're going to be, just like you said, for sure.
Right. So you were talking a bit about what advice would you give to a founder, what they should do in the next month or so?
Yeah. If you've never been identified on your company blog as the author, put the owner, the founder, the CEO, some executive or subject matter expert as the author of a blog on your website. That's probably the easiest thing. You have control over that. It should have your name, your title, and a brief bio. And so if you just committed to doing a blog a month, or have your team write the blog, and don't let them, or you don't have ChatGPT write that blog for you. You have to have some expertise. You have to talk about your experience. You have to talk about your struggles, things that AI cannot write for you. After I give these tips, I'm going to give the audience an easy way for them to be able to communicate what they're about in a way that ChatGPT cannot mimic. And so I think that'll be helpful for listeners. And so that would be the first thing to do. The second thing to do, which these AI models also are able to capture what's going on in social media. And so, from a B2B perspective, LinkedIn is a very popular place. From a B2C, I would say Facebook, Instagram are very popular. Even if you have a B2C focus, it will still be able to understand what you're talking about on LinkedIn. I would say if you've never been on a podcast and you know somebody, or if there's an industry podcast of some place that perhaps you belong to an association and they have a podcast, perhaps there's somebody in your community that would be a partner brand to you and they have a podcast, get on a podcast. The page for the show will give you the authority of you being the expert that's being interviewed. If that podcast is on YouTube, these AI models are looking at the transcripts of YouTube. That's a very popular place for them to cite. If there is potential for you to get a Wikipedia page, that's also another place for you to engage in some content off of your website. And then I would say it's declined a little bit, but many of these models look at Reddit threads for how they are finding out about businesses. And so there is value in starting a thread, but there's actually more value in you commenting on a thread. And so if you're not familiar with Reddit, do a little research, look for conversations that are appropriate in your industry. And then if you're a local business, make sure your Google business profile is up to date. Make sure there are location signals within the Google business profile, your website. And then I would say an easy one for businesses also to control is to start a frequently asked questions page on your website, because these models are really structured to answer questions. And go to your customer service team, say, what are the common questions that we get? Talk to your sales team. What are prospects asking about? Use that to formulate your frequently asked questions page, and then simply put those questions and then provide the answer in about 60 to 80 words. That's what is about enough information that satisfies the requirement, but doesn't require you to write tons and tons of copy on that. And so, yeah, those are probably 6 or 7 quick tips that will help. There are tools out there that you can see what your level of visibility is, but I'll tell you an easy and a free one is just go to every one of the models, and they all are different, right? Go to ChatGPT and type in who is and put your first and last name. Don't put your business, just type in who is and put your first and last name. Then a separate search, say, who is the expert in, and then talk about your industry. And if you don't show up, you've got your answer. And then about every 90 days after doing these activities, do that same search again and try to determine where they're referencing that information, what signals it's picking up on. And so it's going to look a little bit different between Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Perplexity. If you're not sure which of these platforms your customers are using, ask them. That might be a great survey that you could send out so that you understand that most of your client base is using this particular platform, and then you can work to optimize for that platform. So I don't know. Was that helpful, Federico? That was a lot of information there. And I think if you just committed to doing 2 or 3 of these, you certainly would be better off than, where you might be now.
I think it's very, very useful. While you were explaining this, I think your explanation was very captivating. I think it is very much valued and appreciated. I find interesting that you can actually ask the agents, how did you find that information, or how did you come up with that list of experts? So that way you can, yes, I agree with you that there's some level of hallucination, but most of the information they provide is accurate, right? You cannot take it as face value. You have to double check it yourself, basically, right? Because that's the how these agents work, right? I think that the keywords was best imperfect solution that we had before, because computers had the limitation of they were unable to analyze words as level as LLMs can do that now, right? So yeah, I find that very interesting. And the idea of having a frequently asked questions, I think that's another interesting idea, because that way now you have a much better, structured information in a much more compact way that can provide the responses that the agent would look for, right?
Right. Yeah. And I would say there's 2 other nuances to this approach. First, you have to decide, what do you want to be known for? And so sometimes the answer is, well, I want to be known for everything that I do. But perhaps there are key services or products that are your best services or products. And if you had to choose 3 to 5 things to be known for, focus on all of your content that you're putting out there to examine those 3 to 5 things from a variety of angles. Because what AI is looking for is they're looking for consistency of what you talk about and what your experience and expertise is in. And they're also looking for coherence across all of these places. Are you saying the same thing over and over? And so when the business owner at Thrive came to me and said, Jimmy, I want you to be the face of the brand, I needed to decide, what did I want to be known for? And so if you look at all of the content that I produced over the last year, it's very clear when I type in who is Jimmy Gibson, what it picks up and the consistency of the message that I have communicated. And so that actually frees you up not to talk about 20 different things, right? Pick 3 to 5 things and make sure you're examining all of those topics from every angle. And then the other thing that I would say is be passionate about what you talk about, give examples, give case studies, talk about the struggles. And so I'm going to hold up my left hand for those of you who are watching. For those of you who are listening, just know that I'm holding up my left hand. And I'm going to start with my pinky. And I think we all remember the pinky promise when we were kids, that we made a promise on the playground. You didn't break that promise, or you were not going to be very popular at school. And so what promise are you giving, on behalf of your company? What promise are you giving to your customers? Do you have a guarantee? Do you have some sort of risk reversal? What are you willing to stand behind? What promise are you giving to your team? What promise are you giving to your vendors? I mean, right there, if you just did that finger, you've probably got 5 or 6 or 7 different things that you could talk about that ChatGPT cannot replicate. The next one is your ring finger. And so, I would say in most parts of the Western world, that's where you wear your wedding band. That relationship started with a spark of passion for that other person. What passion do you have for the business that you're in? What passion do you have for your customer? If it's not about the money, what is it about? People are very interested in that. But it's also about the relationship. You didn't ask that person to marry you on the first date. You didn't expect that person to answer you on the first date. Are you in it for the long-term relationship? My wife and I just celebrated 20 years of marriage. That's a different mindset than saying, oh, I just want one sale and I'm moving on, right? And so right there, you've got another 5, 6, 7 things you can talk about. The next is the middle finger. And no, I'm not giving Federico the finger. I have all my fingers up. And we often consider that a vulgar gesture, but it's actually a gesture of defiance, right? And so who is the villain? Who's the enemy of your brand? People love to rally around a cause. What are your employees fighting for? Are they fighting for your customer? Is your product or service the best that it can be? Go ahead and name your villain. Your customers want to rally around something they believe in. So do your vendors. It could be a person, a company, an ideology. And there's ways to do it respectfully. You don't have to trash the competitor. But if you truly believe your product or service is going to save somebody or give somebody what they're looking for, then it's your responsibility to name the alternative that is not going to get them what they're looking for. And so right there, I probably gave you 10 or 15 different ways to express the middle finger. The pointing finger is the next one. And the pointing finger points at somebody. And so if you don't know who you're talking to, you can't even tell those previous 3 stories, right? So you have to know exactly who you're talking to, what their pain is, what are they staying up late night worried about, what are they passionate about solving. Right there, you've got a ton of things to talk about that ChatGPT can't write for you. The next one is the thumb, and that's the universal symbol for, hey, things are going great, or thumbs down, things are not going so great. If you just had a KPI dashboard that was thumbs up or thumbs down and no wishy-washy in the middle, it'd be pretty clear to know if you were succeeding or not. But the cool thing is the thumbprint is also sort of a metaphor for what thumbprint are you leaving on the world with your business? What thumbprint are you leaving on your customers, the people that work with you, your vendors? What is unique to you? I have 3 sets of twins as nieces and nephews. They actually can open each other's phones with their Face ID, but they can't open it with their thumb. That's unique to every one of us. And so right there, just you carry this hand around with you all day. I've probably given you 50 or 60 different things that you can talk about that are unique to you, that hit on all of those experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And when you get stuck, just rotate through those fingers and you will have a world of content that'll probably last you a year.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a masterclass on how to create high quality content. I'm amazed by your answer.
It took me a long
The
time to make it that simple. But being a magician, we do magic with our hands. And I thought, you know what? Everybody's got all these frameworks and they've got all these difficult things that nobody's ever going to remember. But I would say the majority of people have one hand, hopefully two hands, and they can carry these around and they can remember what those fingers represent. And it should stir something emotionally in you to be able to write from the heart.
right, right. And if you cannot explain it, so or I will say it in a positive way. When you can explain your topic so a 5-year-old could understand it, that you can, take just the essence, that is when you truly understand the topic.
And I'll kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. I started naming that the 5-finger method. And if you type in to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, what is Jimi Gibson's 5-finger method? AI knows what it is because I was consistent. I created a framework that isn't just, here's your content plan. There is a specific process to go through to create content, and it's unique. And so those are the things that you also want to be looking for. And I think this is the first time I've ever tipped that. But yeah, you listeners can do that right now and it will show up and you can see where that is being referenced. And so I'm consistent in the way that I communicate the technique to create content. And you can do the same thing for your business. You've been doing it for years. You know exactly how to do it. Just package it in a way that now you can become the expert at doing this. And so when somebody asks, how should I create content? I'll bet I come up on this process.
Right. Right. Yeah, I find that so fascinating. We did an experiment that where we asked the we did it with ChatGPT, but probably happened with others, to impersonate a person, right? A friend of mine, and please describe this topic as this person, right? And we were amazed on how close it was representing that person, right? And we thought it was funny, and that's kind of where the whole thing ended, right? And we thought, wow, the agents are getting smarter and smarter. But now, when you're describing how they build their knowledge base, then it makes sense, right? I mean, if we can work towards getting the agents to impersonate us, right? If we can provide all the information, if we can build a framework that it's unique to us, we can provide this unique perspective, then we can get the agents to put us as trustworthy experts into their list of subject matter experts, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. And you're exactly right. It is kind of fun. And then what you did was you reverse engineered and you went, oh, okay, well, then I want to be impersonated and I want it to know what my personality is, what my point of view is. And if you sound like everybody else, there's nothing that it can latch onto that makes you discernible from the next business person out there saying the exact same thing. So if you're looking for permission to be yourself, you've just been granted permission to be yourself and to have a point of view on something.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's amazing. I mean, I come from software engineering, right? So for me, the revolutions of changes of mindset or learning new tools, right? Every time you learn a new language, coding language, you're
Right.
basically have to throw away all the knowledge you have and start afresh, right? There's still some things that you can kind of pick up after you learn. It's like learning a new language, right? It's hard, right? Because you basically have to change your mind completely, right? And then roles that are more related to people, they don't change as much, right? Because people are kind of the same. We want to think we are evolved, but we are, at the end of the day, we are we're animals. We're mammals. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm used to those changes, but now with AI, that is getting into the revolution on how we think, how we talk, how we operate, and there's a lot of hype around it, right? And it's a different revolution that I was not prepared for, if that makes sense, right? And I find it interesting.
Yeah, well, you're probably like me, as a developer and then as a magician, I have to know how it works and what goes on behind the scenes so that I can understand how to use it to my advantage. And so I think a lot of organizations are frantically trying to figure out, how do I use AI? How do I create workflows that are efficient? But fewer folks in business are going, well, wait a minute. How can I be discovered and how can I be found when people are asking questions? Because, I would say the typical phrase, if somebody's searching in the old way of SEO for a keyword, is about 4 to 5 word phrases. The typical number of words that people use when they're communicating with one of these large language models is 32 words. And so it's very conversational. People are asking questions. They're trying to get things done. My wife uses it to plan a vacation or, to do some decorating in the home. Well, invariably, there are products and services associated with those types of things. And you want to be in the consideration set when AI has got this knowledge base of who's out there doing what. And then they also have the ability to look at the sentiment of positive or negative for a brand. Who are the people that they should be looking at? Who are the experts in that area? And the more breadcrumbs that you have around the internet that show who you are and what you do, the more likely you are to be in that conversation. The challenge is people are oblivious to the fact that they're not even in the consideration set. And so I would say there's a window of time where you can do some of the things that we talked about today, to get your visibility in a better place.
Right, right. And instead of trying to fight it, embrace it.
It's not going anywhere, is it?
Yes. Yeah. It took me a while to come at peace with that, right? Yeah. And then the other thing I've been, learning about, or I've been talking about, is this idea of synthetic content, right? There's so much AI generated content that it's hard to break the noise, and it makes these conversations much more interesting because there is no AI involved in this conversation. It's just two humans talking. And the quality of the conversations we can have and the content generated by it's a much higher quality than any AI generated content so far, right? Maybe in the future will change.
Sure.
And you kind of lean into that, mention that we shouldn't use ChatGPT to generate the content. We should talk about our struggle, our experiences, rather than just ask GPT to generate some content. Because eventually we as humans, we see the patterns and we can detect when it's a hollow article, right? And so the agents are getting better and better to detect that, right?
Yeah. And if I can use the magic analogy again, it's a really smart mind reader, but all it's doing is when you ask it a question, it is converting your words into tokens, which are numbers. And then before it gives you that answer back, it is looking at the highest probability of what it should reply back for each word. So the first word, it analyzes what the second word should be. Then it analyzes those 2 words, what should the third word be? And so if you think about that, its goal is to give you the highest probability answer. It has no emotion, it has no feelings, it has no empathy. It's just wanting to give you the right answer. Well, it's been trained on all this stuff that's out there that now becomes pretty generic because it wants to succeed in giving you the right answer. And so we talked about hallucinations. Hallucinations sometimes are at throwing in this random answer because it wants to train itself on, well, maybe it would be right. Let me take a chance here. It doesn't know, so it's going to guess. And once you know that, then you can go, okay, well, I can use it to create some drafts. I can use it to think about things and ideate. I can have it give me a separate opinion on something. But in the end, it's your content. You should own it. And you have to layer in the things that are outside of its probability set because that makes it unique.
Right, right. Yeah, and I mean, and kind of adding a little bit more on the magic. It's magic until you see how it happens, right? Then
Mhm.
that magic element, the awe, kind of disappears because now you know how it happens, right? So I think that with the agents, we're looking at them as they're magical. We have so much hype around it because we don't really understand how it works, right? So in the magic show, we want to be taken away by the magic. So, it's kind of okay, right? But in this case, for agents, we really want to understand how it works and just being able to leverage rather than just, get amazed by the shiny new object.
Couldn't have said it better. That was an awesome way to put it.
I
Magicians are truthful liars. We tell you we're going to fool you, and we do, but you don't want that same thing to happen with these AI platforms. Yeah.
I think of magicians as the first white hat hackers. Yeah, or ethical hackers, right? That they overt hack for the good of humanity, if you like, right?
That's right. Bring the joy and wonder back.
Yes, yes. I think that this is amazing, Jimmy. I'm truly awed by everything you discussed. I was thinking of there was an old antique, actually, a desk that was built. I don't know when it was built, but 1700, something like that. That was a magician artifact that eventually avatar wouldn't avatar, and they couldn't figure out how it was working. I don't remember the name. I was trying to look it up, but anyway, it turns out that there was a person inside the desk, right, that was moving the the uh, the character, the avatar, and it 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 tricked the people for many years, right, until eventually they found the desk somewhere stored, and they were able to uncover the mystery, right? But it remained a mystery for many years, right? I don't know if Perry, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, it was actually called the Mechanical Turk, and he had a turban, and he would challenge people to play chess, and people were
Yes,
amazed. Yeah, and so back then they were creating what's the word? Automatons.
mechatronic, right?
Yeah, mechanical robotic things, and so this was the next step that was more human-like, and so, yeah, he sat at a table and had a chess board and, yep, fooled people for a long time.
Yes, yes, and I think that a lot of the hype we're seeing on AI is a little bit like that. I'm not
Mhm.
saying all of it. And I've been exploring throughout the episodes kind of what's hype, what's real on what AI can do, right? Because I find it fascinating, right? And I'm trying to uncover that of mystery around it, right? So that way we can decide, okay, this part is real, this part is hype, and then how can I leverage it better? Right?
Yeah, and I think, that's what we're trying to do for our clients because they're confused and they read a lot of articles and they try to understand, should I spend my money on this or what's going to happen with that? And yeah, so I'm glad you have this show and we can speak openly about these topics and hopefully it can help people sort fact from fiction or magic from mechanics.
Yes, yes, this is amazing. So how can people reach out to you and Thrive Agency?
Yeah. So thriveagency.com is the website. We have a lot of information on there. I write a blog with my name and bio every month, just like I have asked everyone to do here. I also follow that up with about a 15-minute video. It's educational, it's not sales pitchy. So you can go to our YouTube channel. And then I write just about every day on LinkedIn, trying to share some of this information. So would love to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can DM me and ask me a question and I'll be happy to answer it or figure out where I can point you to help you solve your problem. So would love to connect with some of the listeners for sure.
Amazing, amazing. Jimmy, I truly appreciated you being here today. We're going to leave the links on the description of this episode so people can also reach out. Any final remarks before we wrap it up?
No, I would just say if you haven't been proactive about being out there and talking about your industry or your product or service, get out there and do it, and it actually will become fun for you, and you'll see the benefits tenfold in the effort that you put out there. So, yeah, that would just be my encouragement to listeners.
Right. Amazing. Jimmy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a fun conversation.